a lot of stuff has been happening in the last week. Of course, all of it bad. I mean, we had more bailouts. The government is bailing out Citigroup. Not only are they putting another $20 billion into Citigroup on top of the $25 billion they already got, but the government guaranteed $300 billion worth of Citicorp debt. $300 billion. Then a couple of days ago, the government announced another $600 billion bailout, $400 billion more for mortgages, and $200 billion for credit card and auto and student loans. Bloomberg ran an article recently. They're tallying up all these bailouts and guarantees, and now they're up to like $7.6 trillion. I mean, this is complete insanity. In fact, I think at a press conference this week, Paulson basically said that the government is going to print however much money they have to get us out of the problem. Well, the problem is, printing money is not going to get us out of the problem. None of these bailouts are going to help. They're all making the situation worse. We are propping up companies that should be failing. We are trying to prop up more consumer borrowing and more consumer spending. Going deeper into debt is not the solution. Remember, the country is in trouble because as a nation we borrowed and spent too much money. And rather than living through the consequences, the government is trying to make sure that we borrow and spend even more. So if the economy is in trouble now, each time they stimulate it, we get into bigger trouble. Because the result of the stimulus is that we're in more debt than we were before. Because we simply take the stimulus money and spend it. And, by trying to artificially prop up consumption, they're delaying the resolution of these problems, and they are making them worse. And unfortunately, nobody has figured this out. One person who obviously knows what's going on, Paul Volcker, was appointed today in one of his many press conferences this week. Barack Obama mentioned he's got this new Council of Presidential Economic Advisors, a separate council. And the head of that's going to be Paul Volcker, who obviously I have a lot of respect for. And I don't expect him to stay on this committee long. I assume he'll resign because I can't imagine that anything that he would suggest will be followed. And I also would imagine he doesn't want to be associated with the economic collapse that's about to happen while he chairs that committee, because I don't know that he wants to ruin his good reputation, and he certainly will ruin it if his name is associated with Obama's economic policies. But if Obama actually understood any of this, he wouldn't even need an economic team. I mean, it's a waste of money. I mean, that's a good place for the government to start saving money, is by firing every government official with the word economist in their title. I mean, look at all the economic advisors that Bush had, and look at the mess we're in. These guys don't know anything. The government can't solve these problems. There is no policy that's going to work. There's nothing they can do. The only thing they can do is recognize that there's a huge problem, and they need to get out of the way and let the market work. They need to, government needs to shrink its size. They need to cut spending and dismantle departments and make the government a smaller burden on the economy so that the free market can eventually right this ship. And it isn't going to be easy. Rather than hiring all these economic advisors, they should save money. They can go buy my book on Amazon and for $16 know exactly what needs to be done. Or, they can give me a call and I'll tell them for nothing. And it doesn't require a whole bunch of advisors and a whole bunch of policy. We need to allow the economy to work. We need to allow this massive transformation of the consumer-based borrow and spend economy to a production-based save and produce economy. It has to happen. And if the government gets out of the way, it will happen. It might not be fun, but it's going to happen. And will it be in much better shape? But if they try to interfere, if they try to keep in business all these non-viable companies and keep supporting industries and businesses that need to fail, then they prevent the transformation and they make the situation much, much worse, which is exactly what they are doing. And, if you think about it realistically, from an individual perspective, will we really be that much worse off if we just stopped buying stuff? If the average American family didn't go to the mall, didn't buy any more clothes, just made do with the clothes he's got for the next year or two, didn't buy any more gadgets, kept the same cell phone, kept the same computer, didn't buy another television set. You know, we didn't buy any new cars this year. If we just drove the cars we had, would it be a real disaster? I mean, no, of course not. Now, somebody's going to say, well, yes, it will be a disaster for people who work in auto dealerships who are selling cars, or for people who are selling television sets or selling clothing. It'll be a disaster for people in retail. Well, sure, people will lose their jobs in those sectors, but we shouldn't go into debt to buy things we don't need just to keep people in jobs they shouldn't have. What has to happen is people who are in these jobs need to lose those jobs so that their labor can be freed up to do something more productive, like making things, like making cars or making clothing or making television sets. We need to produce stuff, and we can't just keep going into debt to maintain a phony economy. We have to allow this economy to rebalance. The alternative is a complete destruction of our economy, which unfortunately seems to be the most likely event. The government is going to print the dollar into oblivion. We are going to have massive, massive inflation in this country, and there is a very good chance that it turns into hyperinflation. And don't be distracted and fooled by all this nonsense about deflation. That's exactly what the government said in 2001, 2002. It was a scapegoat. It was a ruse. That is not going to happen. Now, in the classic sense, sure, whenever there's an asset bubble, when you have an inflationary boom, you have a deflationary bust, right? And that is happening. But as far as prices, when most people think inflation, deflation, they don't think money supply. They think consumer prices. And people think that consumer prices are going to fall. They're not. They're not going to fall. They're going to spiral out of control. They might fall in terms of gold, in terms of real money. Sure, food prices might come down if you've got gold to buy to pay for food. But in terms of U.S. dollars, if they're going to be dropping from helicopters, prices are going to run out of control. Because the government is not going to allow the deflationary forces to bring prices down. They are going to print money, and that's inflation. Money supply is growing and growing out of control. I don't care that credit is collapsing and asset bubbles are bursting. The government is printing money to counteract it. Now, temporarily, right, because of the deleveraging and because of massive liquidation of assets all around the world by distressed U.S. financial institutions, you're seeing a temporary rise in the dollar that is suppressing commodity prices, that is fooling people into thinking that there's just going to be this massive decline in prices. This is not going to happen. This is a head fake. This is not the real move. This is going to fool a lot of people. It's going to cause a lot of people to make foolish investments, but it's noise. When this process is over, I think commodity prices will resume their ascent with a vengeance and make new highs. Also, you've got this temporary rise in the dollar, which is causing people to jump to some false conclusions that the dollar is going to be strong and that we don't have to worry about inflation. We don't have to worry about how many trillions and trillions of dollars the Fed prints because the world can't get enough of them. The world will always want the dollar. This is nonsense. The dollar is going to collapse. There's nothing it can do but collapse. And as soon as these temporary factors that are helping support the dollar give way, I expect the dollar to fall like a stone, to drop through the floor, to make new lows. And I think it'll be by next year we're going to be in a dollar crisis. This isn't going to be a long time from now. When the dollar starts to fall, I think it's going to fall very quickly, which is one of the main reasons that we stay the course with our investment advice. We keep our assets invested outside the dollar because I think for the people who try to time it, who think that they can go back into the dollar and wait, I think it's going to be very difficult because I think when the dollar falls apart, it's going to be very rapid and very few people will be able to get back out of the dollar in time. I think the best way to go, given the gravity of the situation and how much value the dollar is likely to lose and how rapidly it's likely to lose that value,